All right, we're getting some new details right now into that massive SolarWinds cyber attack. We're just now learning hackers were able to break into Microsoft and access its source code. That's according to a blog post from the software company. Basically, though, they're also saying that no evidence that they have at this point that customer data was accessed, and the investigation is ongoing. That's according to Microsoft. The stock is down fractionally right now, about 20 cents. You know, the U.S. government has been dealing with fallout from the SolarWinds cyber attack for quite a few weeks now. Federal agencies are being told they must update to the latest version of the SolarWinds platform or take the system off by the end of the year. That's midnight tonight, though. SolarWinds basically flattened trading. Here to help us weed through all of this is former FBI Chief Information Officer Gordon Bitko. Gordon, thank you for being here.
Cheryl, thanks for having me on today.
I want to first get your reaction to this news that's just crossing on Microsoft and the fact that they were actually breached as well.
Yeah, so I think what that highlights, Cheryl, is the persistence and the skill of these adversaries, right? They have the patience and the technical know-how to target even the biggest private sector and public sector entities successfully. And really what that tells me, what that should tell us all, is that we all need to be in this together. It's got to be a joint public and private effort to really combat the intruders here. They're going to be persistent. They're going to keep at this. They're not going to go away easily. And so we've all got to really work in this together.
Kind of like the vaccine rollout, which was a public-private partnership. So do you get the sense from your maybe former sources or colleagues at the FBI or in government that the Biden administration is going to pick up the baton here?
I'm hopeful, Cheryl, that they will. One of the things that I would make as a general observation, though, is that cybersecurity has not been the priority that it needs to be for quite a long time. We talk about it a lot when incidents happen, like this and others in the past, and it stays in the news for a few weeks or a month. And then as memory fades, it dwindles into the background a little bit. It's important that we have much more patience and persistence. It's the only way that we're going to compete with some of these adversaries is by doing that. I hope that the Biden administration does that effectively. One of the things that they need to do is get the NDAA passed. It's got the creation of the National Cyber Director in it. And that's an important role. It's been pretty clear in the way the government's responded to this that there hasn't been as much consistency and coherence across all of government as there really should be.
And you're talking about the defense bill, which is going to be voted on tomorrow in the Senate, and final approval with that override of the president's veto. To be clear, expectations is we should see that pass. But there's millions of dollars in there, tens of millions, to go towards cybersecurity. But what about the systems within the Pentagon, within the Labor Department, the IRS? Aren't these systems still, you know, compared to private companies, rather still kind of old and need to be updated?
Absolutely, Cheryl. That's a really important point. And one of the points of emphasis that we continue to make in thinking about this is that modernization is necessary for a lot of reasons, to get services to users, to warfighters in the case of the Department of Defense, or to folks who are receiving unemployment insurance or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, the security really is in need of update. And there's no time like the present. We can't really afford to wait and continue to kick the can down the road. We really have to start making those investments.
What does this tell you about Russia and also about China, but more Russia since we're talking about SolarWinds and the sophistication that these hackers seem to have? Why do they always seem to be ahead of the curve and ahead of us?
Well, that's an interesting question, Cheryl. I'm not sure that I would say that they're ahead of us as much as that cybersecurity is really hard. I don't think it's reasonable to assume that we don't have similar capabilities going in the opposite direction, but it highlights the complexity of our networks, of our systems. And there's always opportunities to find weaknesses if we are not continuously vigilant, continuously investing. And leadership in government agencies and in the private sector just needs to start taking that much more seriously than they have. It can't just be a matter of compliance like it's been for too long for too many organizations. It's got to become much more tied to the bottom line for the organization. The Russians are really good at that persistence. They'll get a foothold somewhere, and they won't go away. They'll go quiet for a while. They'll take on all sorts of deceptive techniques to make you think that they've gone away, and then they'll come back. And they're going to continue to do that. They see this as really asymmetric success for them, right? They don't need the resources that we have in the Department of Defense. They need a few really skilled, really capable hackers to do this work for them, and look at the value that they've gotten out of it. So I think we need to assume they're going to continue to do this. They're going to continue to do this indefinitely. And as we patch these vulnerabilities from SolarWinds, they're going to move on and find others.
Yeah, well, and one thing we did learn, I mean, we had an entire investigation by Robert Mueller over this whole issue, and here they came in and still were able to infiltrate our government. What have we learned from SolarWinds? What's the biggest takeaway, in your opinion?
I think the biggest takeaway goes back to Cheryl, the idea that I was saying about public and private cooperation, and really, there's a lot of information across the government and the private sector about these intruders, about these actors. We need to be doing a much more progressive and proactive job of sharing all that information between industry and government all the time. It can't be just in response to when an incident like this happens. And unfortunately, what we learned is that we're reacting. We're too often reacting. This kind of goes back to your point about, the Russians have been doing this for too long, and that's true. And we're always reacting on the defensive side instead of more positively asserting defensive techniques, investing in technologies that can help protect our networks, doing things to hunt on a proactive and regular basis so we're not surprised when these things do happen, like unfortunately we've been here.
Yeah, SolarWinds was a big shock to the system, for sure. Gordon Bitko. Gordon, thank you very much for being here. Happy New Year.
Thanks. Same to you, Cheryl.
All right.